Welcome to Those Guys Not Your Average Sports Podcast, where college football meets Friday Night Lights, underdog stories, and two guys arguing over the last slice of pizza. You have me, Chris Love, and of course my podcast partner, Troy Honeycutt. So I'm just going to give a little intro about the both of us. Of course, there's me, Chris Love. I actually have a background in playing a little bit of college football and some high school football. I was an all-state center at Las Cruces High School back in the day. I made the North-South All-Star game. I also had some stints in college football at Mesa Community College, Benedictine College, and Western New Mexico. Then, of course, there's Troy. I don't know how much experience he really has. He kind of was a JV kind of scout team guy his sophomore year. Played a little freshman ball at Cruces, and I think he ended up quitting or something. So, yeah, he doesn't really have a background, so you guys are going to have to bear with him.
Chris, thank you for introducing myself, giving a little bit of background on what I was able to accomplish early on. But yeah, for those of you who don't know Chris, he doesn't always tell the truth on certain things. But no, we're excited to kind of start this podcast. So it has kind of been in the works for quite some time, just due to life circumstances, whether it was having kids or Chris, in Chris's case, getting married. There was always a lot of stuff to plan for, and made it very difficult. But we're here now, and hopefully, just bear with us. This podcast is going to get better. This is just something that, we've kind of put together for right now, and it'll work, but hopefully as the year progresses, we're not the best, or we're not the most tech savvy individuals. Before this, we probably spent like an hour just trying to get to this point. But yeah, I could see this progressing, and this is just something that we wanted to do to have fun, on our spare time, just because we're two guys that truly do, love the sport of football. At all levels, whether it's high school, college, NFL. Now, this is probably going to be geared more towards like the college realm and like the high school realm. And we're not going to just be like your average sports podcast talking about like all the big schools, all the big universities and stuff. We are going to touch on that. But I think for us, it was important to kind of show love to these smaller schools. And to me, that's what makes football and college football great, is just all the other universities that are out there that people might not even be familiar with. So I think, the goal for us is to get people to kind of at least follow up with some of these other schools that might be happening, or some of these other, teams playing maybe close to you, and just give you the opportunity to kind of check them out as well. But also kind of just going back and forth with the excitement of what's happening in college sports today. Obviously, we have the playoffs, we have NIL, and, obviously the drama between all the conference realignment and stuff like that. So
well said, Troy. And just so you guys know, also bear with us. Again, we're kind of new at this, so just kind of flow as we flow. And do know Troy likes to have a lot of off the wall hot takes. So if he says something kind of crazy, don't pay him any mind. I'm more of the logical one out of us too, so just be prepared for that.
So remember when I said he likes to lie a lot? That's kind of where I was getting at.
So what you're saying, Troy, is I never played ball at Mesa Community College or
No.
Benedictine or Western New Mexico?
No, none of that has ever happened. So
I wasn't a North-South All-Star in high school?
No, definitely. I think you were gone by junior year, if I'm not mistaken, right? And then you tried to take my knee out with you. So on your way out,
hey, you know what?
By any means necessary. You had to give me one final chop block.
Chop blocking's effective. Hey, sometimes you gotta do what you gotta do to survive.
Chris, so man, obviously a little bit about you. Obviously, we kind of have two different perspectives when it comes to sports. We've been on different levels. Obviously, like, my college career didn't play out the way I was hoping it would, but I still got to carry some of that experience. And you kind of got to jump into the coaching realm and stuff. So as far as like that goes, I think you kind of get to see football from a different perspective, and I'm sure you've kind of learned a lot, progressing and moving forward. Where are you at in coaching now?
So I'm actually taking a year off of coaching. I'm a teacher, so I have some other, of course, career things that I'm doing as well as, just got married. So, I have to take care of some home things as well. But I'm taking a year off. But yeah, no, coaching gives an interesting perspective because, you go from the of course, playing aspect of it, which you have a lot of knowledge about. But when you coach at any level, the main things that you're looking at is development. You're looking at, of course, how do players develop and progress, whether it's just the season or from year to year. And then, of course, the X's and O's part, right? Formulating a game plan or really trying to install various things into the game plan. And then, of course, seeing if your players can adjust, if your players can adapt, if your players could execute the game plan. Looking at other teams and what they do best or what they're trying to game plan for and then trying to counter that or strategize against that. So, yeah, the coaching aspect is different, a lot more, I would say, chess. Instead of going out there and just reacting, it's a lot more of that mental adjustment and trying to have again, it's like chess. You're trying to have your strategy ready to go for whatever the opponent wants to do. So it's definitely a little different.
Yeah, I think that's one thing that we've talked about pretty consistently is, man, growing up in like the state of New Mexico where we played, there wasn't, and I don't know if it was just like the era, but there wasn't a whole lot of, I guess, studies being done on like development, you know what I mean? Like student athlete development, because nothing on our coaches back in the day, I think they were just doing what, they knew. And, a lot of it, you know how it was, like doing the stations and then doing, the way that we would do weightlifting and stuff like that. We were maxing out every day, it felt like. And I think now with all these studies that have been done, that's just not, I guess, the effective way to go about stuff like that. So now you're starting to see like younger student athletes develop a lot better. I think there was a period there, like maybe back in 2020, when obviously kids weren't in school on campus, doing, participating in sports at all. Like you kind of saw that slow down. But I noticed kind of the years before that, and it's starting to become popular again. These student athletes are starting to be better, more developed. The off-season type of workouts are becoming more popular, not necessarily just having to wait for your school to host them, but I mean, finding these guys like around town, like these performance level trainers that are working with you individually. And I mean, I think you're kind of seeing an increase of that. That's, kind of happening right now. And student athletes are going to be better off. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. Have you come across like maybe like, was that the case ever for you guys? I know you were at the middle school level, but now you're kind of, hopefully, in the future, maybe get involved in the high school level a little bit. But your nephew is currently in high school right now. I mean, like, have you noticed any different trends with that?
Sure, a little bit. Yeah, I think just with anything, right? We're in the rich age of information. So I just think that coaches, players, they have so much more information now in terms of sports science, nutrition, just strategic development. I think our coaches did the best they could at the time. Shout out to our high school coaches.
Absolutely.
They really, really spent a lot of time and energy of really installing great practice game plans and actual game time game plans. But I think back then it was just a little different, right? It was all about how strong can you be, and even the play calling. It was more, a lot of more many schools ran, I form, right? Or you had some schools running the wishbone or whatever the case is. So a lot of it was hat on a hat, smash mouth football, get a big strong fullback in there, put his nose in that.
Yeah.
Have a, quick running back or a running back that could go north south depending on your offense. And it was a little bit more simplified. You might have had at the most 8 to 10 different type of pass plays. And as we see with the development of even college, pro, everything like that, we're starting to see a lot more of that, of the spread offense influence coming in. A lot more, quick checks, coaches sending in signals from the sideline, a quicker paced offenses where you use the whole field. You kind of play everywhere. You don't just focus on a certain hash point or anything like that. So because you're starting to see more sophisticated offenses, or offenses that incorporate a lot more shifting, a lot more motioning, kids at a younger age that are coming in, they are coming in with more, I'll say more talent, or at least more skill, because skill development is such a focus now at the youth age.
Yeah.
What I will say, the only drawback and something that I'm concerned about is I do feel like you're seeing an increase in injuries simply because you're seeing less multi-sport athletes. So because kids are focused on, oh, I'm just going to be a football player, and oh, I'm just going to focus on skill development. Yeah, they're coming in at a higher level with skill, but sometimes I feel like their bodies aren't prepared for the grind of a contact sport like football, and we start seeing the ACLs or the PCLs or the Achilles. That's popular now. Achilles popping, things that we would never see back in the day. So I think you take the good with the bad. Kids are coming in more skilled. Kids are coming in that could do a little bit more, but you're starting to see kids sidelined more, or not prepared for the physicality of the game. And that is something that I feel like our coaches from back in the day helped us with, is just being a little mentally tougher and physically stronger. So
I agree. Right? I enjoy it. That wasn't me like bashing on anyone before. Like, I enjoyed the whole maxing out thing every day. I mean, because I guess I get to see results right away, and I knew things were working. But yeah, no, as like a former student athlete, I guess I remember my senior year, we were done, right? We lost in the quarterfinals, and then after that, like, preparing for college and preparing for the North-South All-Star game, that was harder for me because I didn't have like an off-season like routine. Just because, you don't want to go back and, work out with the underclassmen. Nothing on them. They want to stay the following year, but your time is done. They're focused on the people that are going to be there next year and developing their team. So to kind of like let a high school kid kind of just veer off and, worry about that himself, I think to me that was pretty challenging. And I would still work out, but I had no guidance on like how to I guess take that next step. And obviously I blew out my knee in the North-South game, and that was right before I was supposed to report to college. Well, a part of me, I truly believe it was because of the preparation for that. I was conditioned. I was, my strength was there, but obviously, I could have, if I was like working out at like maybe one of these like sports performance places, or, I had a, personal trainer, I think things would have been a little bit different. Because man, it's just not the same intensity, that it is like going through, like an off season type of workout. So yeah, I guess I could, and I wasn't, a multi-sport athlete. I played football, and that was about it. So I did nothing in the off season besides working out, trying to stay in shape. So I could definitely see what you're describing. But I do think things are getting better, and you look at it everywhere now. High schools are focused on the student athlete and working on their development. Especially now, I feel like you have to, just because with like the transfer portal and all that. Man, you're gonna have to stand out some way, right? So, to me, being able to be on top of your game, like at the high school level, is important. Just not for your physical health, but also to get to the next level as well.
Absolutely, Troy. And honestly, what do they always say? Experience is the best teacher. So
Yeah.
I think what's happening, Troy, is there's many former athletes that have had an experience like you. And what they do is once they get to a certain age or a certain position, they're the ones that are opening up these performance centers, and they're the ones that are making, this knowledge, sports science, performance enhancement, all of these things that are crucial to the athlete now. I think, your generation or our generation, I should say, and a little older, since they've had these experiences, they're coming in and they're building these program and resources for our young student athletes, and giving them the, like you said, the access and the knowledge that could be beneficial, so they don't go through the same things as, maybe our generation or older. They're not having the same injuries, or they're not going to these programs and and feeling like they're not prepared. So that's what's really cool about what I feel like our generation is doing is taking, looking back at our experiences and then building something really cool for the younger generation.
Yeah, no, definitely, man. I I agree with you on that. I don't know. First of all, I don't even know how we got there. I know that wasn't even part of what we were talking about, but I guess that's just what comes with coaching, right? Just player development, kind of seeing where they're at now. But another thing too, like I just remember, like now, I think it's important to kind of instill like the X's and O's to
Yes.
younger athletes now, because I remember even me. Man, and I remember like my middle school coaches, and even when you were playing tackle football in fifth grade, they relied heavily on you just watching, the NFL like over the weekends and stuff and learning, because no one really actually, broke down the X's and O's until really high school. But I feel like if you're waiting until high school to do all that, like you're already kind of behind. Because I remember there was times even, as a sophomore or even junior, I didn't have a full understanding. Like my football IQ wasn't where it probably needed to be, especially as a center, right? And then so you're playing a little bit slower because you're a little bit more hesitant. But obviously, like senior year, I peaked out kind of. I had a full understanding of what was happening, so you can go 100 miles per hour. Are you guys starting to like instill like X's and O's, like time to break down the X's and O's to those students, or are you kind of still relying heavily on them, finding that somewhere else?
So, to answer your question, Troy, yes. Having the experience being a youth coach, it just depends on the group of kids you have.
Yeah.
Are they willing to learn? Kind of what's their capacity for learning? So every group's different on what you could do with them and what you can't. I think the biggest thing, of course, is fundamentals.
Yeah.
As a coach, especially at the youth level, you really want to hone in on fundamentals. How does a really good run block look? Where do
Yeah.
you put your head? What side does your head go on, right? How do you engage? How do you use your legs, right? Things like that. How do you have a strong stance? How do you fire out? Whether it's quarterback's running back, of course, stance work. How do things like that. So really big on fundamentals, even just basic tackling, not leading with your head, but looking
Yeah.
up, the proper tackle, rolling, whatever the case is. So I think it's really big on hammering in on the fundamentals with young kids, because fundamentals are what are going to guide you even at the next level, right? Of course, things are going to get more sophisticated, whether you're transitioning from middle school to high school, or of course high school to college, and then if you're lucky enough, college to the professional leagues. But
Yeah.
if you have strong fundamentals and you master the fundamentals, you're going to be ahead of the curve compared to a lot of athletes that don't have good fundamentals, don't have good discipline. Because hey, when in doubt, say the play breaks down or something doesn't go right, I still know how to make a key block. I still know how
Yeah.
to make a good textbook tackle. I still, if you're a quarterback, okay, I still know how to go through my progressions, or I still know how to make a good read, or place the ball at a certain place. So
Yeah.
I would say that at that level, or at any level, it is so important to hone in on the fundamentals, especially if you're coaching youth ball.
Yeah.
You can win at that level just if your kids have very strong fundamentals and they're disciplined.
Yeah. No, I agree, man. Well, so my battery's running out here pretty soon. So, man, we'll just go ahead and jump right into it. Obviously, this show's going to be geared towards like what, a little bit of college, a little bit of high school, a little bit of college. Some of the things that, this has been our opening weekend. What were some cool things that you saw last Friday or Saturday, in the high school realm in your area?
Sure, so I went to the Mayfield Cruces game, and if you're from Las Cruces, you definitely know about that rivalry and how much it means to the city and how exciting it is. And then if you don't know what it is traditionally, of course, in Las Cruces, we had two high schools, right? Mayfield High School and Las Cruces High School. Big football rivalry. It definitely amplified in the 90s and early 2000s because both teams were state championship contenders. So for a good part of the early 2000s and 90s, whatever team won our district most likely was going to represent Southern New Mexico in the state championship. And I went to that game, unfortunately, because of new schools that were built. Well, they're not new anymore, but, schools
Just
being
realignment
built
stuff.
and
Yeah.
realignment and everything like that. Mayfield High School has lost, a lot of students as well as its same classification. So now Las Cruces High is on a 10-win streak over the last 10 seasons. And it was pretty ugly. I mean, Mayfield came out, they tried fighting. They came out with a good attitude. They were playing hard, but Cruces just with size, talent, you name it, they were just so overpowering. Cruces looked really good. They won 61-6. They were firing off on all cylinders. The pass game was there. The run game was there. It was really cool. Cruces' featured running back was actually a kid that I had the pleasure of coaching when he was in 8th grade. And we saw a lot of talent there, so that was really neat to see him now as a senior, as one of the top players in the state. Even Cruces' middle linebacker was a former player too, and he was in the backfield all game and everything like that. So, no, it was great to see Cruces, play well and, of course, have such a large defeat. But also it was kind of sad too because you want a competitive, you want parity in the city, right? You want a competitive transfer of power. You want a competitive transfer of power across the city. Outside of that, from what I know, Oregon Mountain High School, formerly Oñate, they lost 56-28. But from what I watched, they looked pretty decent in the pass game.
Yeah,
I mean, they had their receivers had some big catches. Their quarterback ran the ball pretty well. Their running back, when there was holes, he had some good runs, but their defense, they just needs a little bit of work. And El Dorado and Albuquerque, they kind of overpowered Oregon with their passing game, and particularly, I think one receiver almost broke a high school record for receiving, so that was kind of frightening. So, they have work to do.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think to put some perspective, on that Mayfield Cruces game. I mean, it used to be a game where 28,000 people would show up, and I mean, it would fill up Aggie Memorial Stadium, and it's just not there anymore. It's kind of sad to see. Obviously, I'm not a Mayfield fan. Graduated from Cruces. Those were our rivals.
Go Dogs, right?
But yeah, absolutely. But I mean, kind of like what you said. I mean, you kind of want to see like an even transfer of power, I guess. I mean, that's the point. That is the point of like a rivalry, right? I mean, it's supposed to go back and forth sometimes. That's what makes it fun. But yeah, you just see that the depth. There's just not as much depth on Mayfield's end, and it's just a lot different. And I think it's just because maybe more of that side of the city has been developing a little bit, or hasn't been developing as much as it probably should have been. Everything's branching out east. So, yeah, that's why you're seeing teams like Centennial and Oñate get the bulk of the kids. Cruces, I would say, even looked down a couple times, but now they're starting to kind of rebuild. I mean, they have a beautiful brand new high school. I mean, it wasn't what we walked into.
No. I mean, it's only when they remodeled Las Cruces High School, it's about 10 years old, so... Or no, probably like 13 years old now. But no, Troy, you touched on Centennial, and to give some perspective for our viewers, right? Centennial High School, they built that high school in 2012, and they've kind of taken over as one of the power schools when it comes to football and some other sports in the city. So they're kind of now the direct. Of course, Cruces' direct rival is still Mayfield. However, in terms of competition, Centennial High School is more of their power rival in terms of football. Centennial has a really good program under Coach Ocampo. Excellent coach. Those boys, they play hard. Unfortunately, they lost this past Saturday to Cleveland. Of course, Cleveland, they're coming off of, state championship wins. They're a powerhouse in Rio Rancho, New Mexico. But they had a really good showing. It was a close game, high-scoring affair. I think it was 55-49.
Yeah.
But Centennial, they're a little young. Some of their skilled players at the quarterback and running back position, who are their marquee players, they're juniors. So they will have another year to, of course, grow and develop. So I'm excited to see what Centennial does this year. I'm excited to see what they do next year. I'm excited for that Centennial Cruces High football game at the end of the year. I'm predicting it's probably going to be for the district title. And who knows? they might match up in the playoffs. Ideally, a state championship matchup. We'll see how those Rio Rancho and Albuquerque schools fare, but that's going to be exciting to see how the season progresses down
No,
here in Las
definitely.
Cruces.
And hopefully Coach Lopez can get his first state title. So
Yes.
that'll be awesome. I think they have a really good shot at doing that this year. So I was excited, man. I will say too, like it's usually hard to stream games down. Las Cruces Public Schools Network did a pretty good job. I could actually, view that. As far as like local schools out here, man, I remember I think last year I went to Jinx and Bigsby, or no, I'm sorry, Jinx and Broken Arrow. That was one of my first high school games that have been out here, and high school football is no joke out here in Oklahoma. So, man, just kind of seeing the size and the speed. I mean, these kids are developed, and these high schools, man, they put so much money into their football programs and just their sports in general. I know Bigsby, it was a smaller high school whenever I first moved up here about 8 years ago, but kind of like Cruces High, it had a makeover and it's like completely redone. Man, I've done like career fairs out there for work, and it's such a beautiful high school out there. I remember when they moved up in classification, there was talk about them not maybe being able to handle it. However, they've done pretty well. They've won state a couple times, I believe. So hopefully I can catch a game out there this year. That's kind of my goal.
Sure.
The stadium, it's not as big as like some of the ones that they have down here, like Union High. Union got like a brand new stadium. Maybe they opened it up about 2 or 3 years ago. And man, I mean, it's better than some, smaller D1 AA schools for sure. So I need to venture out a little bit more and watch some high school games, but just due to my schedule, doing like shift work and stuff, it was pretty challenging to do all that stuff. Jinx was it's probably one of the better schools out here as well. They have, I don't know how many state titles, but the school itself, man, is beautiful. Their football stadium, it's gorgeous, just like any of them out here, man. But that was a pretty big eye opener for me, just to kind of see the size difference and just like the type of athletes that they have out here in Oklahoma. They take it pretty serious. And I mean, like how New Mexico is, like we have some good teams out there, like Cleveland, Centennial, Las Cruces. But I would say, man, like the depth is like the huge difference. So, maybe, like our starters are pretty legit. Well, I mean, these second stringers, these third stringers, I mean, like their JV team, I mean, they're all stacked. So out here, they're just stacked with talent.
Real quick, can you kind of give our viewers some perspective on like what region of Oklahoma these schools are in?
Yeah, so I live in the Broken Arrow area right now. So that's basically like a suburb of Tulsa, the northeastern part of the state. So I haven't done any like exploring with like any Oklahoma City schools or anything like that, but I will say the majority of the state titles, I believe, are here in the Tulsa region. So schools like Owasso, Bigsby, Union, Jinx, Broken Arrow, they're the ones that are like sharing the title. So man, and obviously we have like a whole set of private schools down here too that are little powerhouses as well. So man, football is pretty fun out here. And unfortunately, even with me being such a big football fan, I haven't been able to kind of venture out and watch many of those games. It seems like I always have something going on. I'm out of town, whatever the case may be. But I'm going to pay attention to it a little bit more out here, and just kind of make an effort to make a few of those games, especially some of the big ones. So. But Jinx and Broken Arrow, that was fun. I mean, you talk about the stadiums getting packed. Like the Field of Dreams, for the majority of the season, it's not very packed. The home side is, away side isn't. That's not the case out here, man. People come out. So it's pretty neat. Let's move on let's talk a little bit about college, since we're going to wrap up here in a minute. But week 0, obviously, it's not the most exciting time for a lot of football fans or college football fans. Obviously, everyone is looking to see when Bama, LSU, or Texas is playing, right, or OU, OSU. However, guys like me and you, I think we just get excited whenever college football starts. So, for me, I was excited to watch the Kansas State-Iowa State game. However, when it started, I thought it was pretty sloppy. I will say, though, the field conditions weren't great. The field
No,
conditions were, yeah. I don't, and they've played a couple games there in the past. I remember Georgia Tech. I think it was Georgia Tech. They played like Florida State out there, and I might have that backwards to someone, but and it's been decent in the past. I've watched a Notre Dame game out there, like not in Ireland, obviously, but I've watched it on TV, and they've had decent field conditions in the past. But man, it was raining. It didn't look very fun to be on that field. I mean, they were sliding around everywhere, dropping passes left and right. Wasn't
it was rough.
it wasn't the best. So, Kansas State's quarterback, Avery Johnson, man, he kind of had a rough game starting out. I was expecting a little bit more from him, but I'm going to blame it on the field conditions and being in Ireland for the most part. But there was, were you able to catch much of that game at all?
I caught a bit of it. It was raining and just wet and everything under the sun with that, right?
Yeah.
What in like the first quarter they had multiple fumbles?
Yeah, man, it was going back and forth. Within the first couple of minutes there was already like 2 fumbles. I will say though, Chris, ever since this new NCAA football game has come out, I get frustrated playing it just because wide receivers over here dropping passes and then I've been victim to this. They're dropping passes, and then all of a sudden it's picked off or whatever. It's tipped off someone's hand, and next thing you know, it's picked off. And I remember kind of going back and forth with you on that. I'm like, man, okay, that's not going to happen, right? The 4 or 5 games that I watched this weekend, I saw a lot of that happening.
Maybe
Portland
they did
State,
something right, huh?
Yeah. Man, I'll say I watched a little bit of the Portland State and Tarleton State game. I know it was not a big game, but I watched a little. It was what?
Wasn't it a blowout? Tarleton
It was 42
blew them out,
42 nothing. But
Yeah.
it seemed like every time Portland State got some momentum and they were like driving, someone, a tipped pass was picked off, something dumb happened. Tarleton State seized the momentum of that pretty quick. And, man, the reason why I kind of follow up with that is because I know Tarleton State, I followed up with them when they were Division II, whenever they're in the Lone Star Conference. But man, one of these days they're gonna be FBS. I already know. They're kind of setting everything up. Their stadium has been completely redone. So they have a pretty decent sized stadium out there too, in Stephenville, Texas. And man, so I like to watch them play. I think they're a solid team. Hopefully they go pretty far in the playoffs this year. So
Let me ask you, Troy, kind of switching gears a little bit. What did you think of Idaho State kind of pushing UNLV to the brink?
So I wasn't expecting that. I thought UNLV was going to come out a little bit more dominant, especially having a good year last year. But I know they kind of got hurt a little bit in the transfer portal, new coaching staff. But I mean, you have Dan Mullen, and he's able to recruit pretty well, right? However, I don't know if you're aware of this or not, but back in 2015, Idaho State played UNLV at UNLV. Do you happen to know what the score of that game was?
This was how much longer or how long ago, Troy?
It was back in 2015. It was 80-7. UNLV won 80-7. Yes. So that was back when Tony Sanchez was there. That was, I think, that was his first win over there at UNLV. But they won. It was back in 2015. They won 80-7.
Well, hold on, Troy. Let me make a clarifying remark, Troy. It was not 80-7. What it was 80-8. So we got
80-8. Okay. All right. Yeah.
By 1 point, right?
Yep. But UNLV, that was the first time I've ever seen 80 points hung up on somebody, and
80 points. Wow.
80 points, man. 80 points. So I will say, Idaho State, even though, I mean, you're talking about different players, different coaches, I'm sure they had that one marked on their calendar because they came out swinging, man. They did some pretty good stuff. Now, towards the end, I will say, like in the fourth quarter, once again, tipped passes and, turnovers. Turnovers killed them, and they still lost within, 7, 8? What was it, 38? Yeah, they lost by 7. So they kept it really close, man. It was entertaining, but of course, whenever I start watching that game, they start, fumbling and throwing picks. So I was like, oh, okay, great. I was hoping to see like, an upset or see something, cool happen. But, I like UNLV. I like to see them succeed, in all honesty. But Idaho State, man, they came out swinging. They have nothing to hold their heads, I mean, man, they should hold their heads up pretty high on that because the last time they walked in, and it wasn't at Allegiant Stadium. It was actually at, their other stadium, Sam Boyd Stadium. They got their butts kicked. So they did pretty well. They held their own.
Yeah. Good for Idaho State, right?
Yeah.
Their fan base deserves, a good season. It's a loyal fan base.
Yeah.
So I want to see Idaho State do well. As for UNLV, Troy, we got to call UNLV by its appropriate name, the new Last Chance U, because they're getting all the last chance transfers from all the different schools. So we'll see what they do. They brought in a lot of people from the portal and everything. So we'll see if they could turn that into wins and maybe a pretty good bowl game.
Yeah, if they could stay consecutive and they go to a bowl game, that'd be good for them. So, because that program has been hurting for quite some time, so they need to build a steady fan base. I like to see UNLV do good. I think, like I said, the one time that I was following up with UNLV pretty hard was when Bobby Hawk was there. So, Yeah, I enjoyed it, and he took them to, the Texas Bowl or the Dallas Bowl, and or it was the Heart of Dallas Bowl, I believe. And they played North Texas. It was a good game up until the end, and they kind of let that one slip away. But, man, I want to see UNLV do pretty well this year. Especially, I just like seeing those schools, man, that haven't seen a lot of success. I like to see them do well. And, same with KU, man. KU did not have a great year last year. The year before they did. They went to a bowl game. They won it first time, and I can't remember how long. But, man, I will say, this is going to be something silly to kind of blame it on, but they had no stadium last year. They had no, at-home advantage. They had nothing. They played all their games in Kansas City in a soccer stadium and sometimes Arrowhead Stadium, right? But, yes, Kansas City, it's not far. It's about, 2 hours away, but it's still not home, right? So it still requires you to travel, and it feels like you're on the road the entire year. So, and they put it together towards the end of the season. They won a couple games, and, they went 5-7 last year, so they just missed like a bowl game. But I'm going to blame it a little bit on, not having that home field advantage. And they busted out the new stadium yesterday. They broke it in, and it looks really nice. And Fresno State too. They played Fresno State last night, and Fresno State's no walkover, man. They're no pushover at least. If you sleep on them, they'll smack you in the mouth. And the first couple drives, Fresno State, they looked fast. They looked explosive. They scored, I believe, on their opening drive. There was a point there where their quarterback made a pretty nice play. He was about to get sacked, and he managed to just pitch the ball, and they ended up breaking off a pretty long run and saved the drive. That's ultimately the only drive that they scored off of. But KU looks pretty good, man. Jalen Daniels, that dude, he's been there for about 6 years. But
hey, Troy,
what's up?
You remember the movie Bad Boys 2? What did Will Smith say? You're at least 30. Isn't Jalen Daniels at least 30?
Man, I don't know how old he is, but he's been there for about 6 years. But good for him, and he fits that style of offense perfectly. So because he has a pretty good arm, he can sit back and he can sling the ball pretty good, but he can move, man. So they still have that option package there, right? So they run the option a lot. There was a lot of read option plays that they ran, and man, they looked explosive for the most part, and they won the game 31-7. They let off the gas pedal a lot on the fourth quarter, which rightfully so. They had the lead. They took Jalen out. I think they took Daniels out pretty early. They took him out in the beginning of the fourth quarter. So he has a history of getting hurt. So that's just something that they don't want.
Hey, guys, so we're now to the end of the show. So the last thing we want to do before Troy and I sign off is do some predictions of this exciting week 1 of FBS college football. Hey, next Saturday, clear your plans. Viewers at home, do whatever you need to do. If you're married, and your wife is expecting you to have chores that day or whatever, do them early. If you're a kid and your parents need you to do some stuff, get it done early because next Saturday you're not gonna want to wish you're not gonna want to miss the football games that are being presented to us. It is Christmas in August, I tell you.
Yeah.
So, Troy, let's do a couple predictions. We won't do every game, but I just want to go through a couple.
Hang on.
So, Troy, let's start with your favorite team. So, number 9
LSU and
LSU,
Clemson.
number 4 Clemson. Who do you think is going to win?
Man, so that's gonna set the tone for the season, man. And it goes back to, back in 2019-2020 season, whenever LSU when LSU played Texas, and they had that crazy game that went all the way to the end, like to the final minutes. So man, I'm gonna go with LSU on this, and I'm gonna say 24-17 LSU.
24-17.
Yeah,
LSU.
yeah.
I got 21-14 LSU. I think Nessmeyer is going to have a game-winning drive, win the game. I'm a big Cade. Is it Kublik? I'm a big Cade Kublik fan. I think he's a pretty athletic quarterback. But I just think LSU with that team, with that talent, with Nessmeyer, I think it's going to be a tough defensive game. But I think he pulls it out at the end.
Yeah, no, man. It's going to start off slow, I think. It's going to be both, two giants filling each other out. So it's going to be a good game.
Speaking of giants, what do you think about Notre Dame, Miami?
Ooh, man, that's a good game.
Are you on the Carson Beck hype train or no?
No, I'm not. But I think I'm going to pull. I'm not a fan of either team, if I'm being honest. But I think I'm going to pull with Notre Dame on that one.
Notre Dame has a really good run game with Love.
Yeah.
So I think if they could control the clock and play good defense, they can win. Shout out to my older brother, big Miami Hurricane fan. I'll say 17-14, Miami gets it done. And of course, Troy, our final prediction is going to be the biggest game, New Mexico versus 14 Michigan. No, I'm joking. Hey, you know
what?
Right?
That is going to be on my sleeper game to watch. I do encourage people to watch that game, and the reason why I say that is because Jason Eck, man, he's a hell of a coach. And that's something that I said from the very beginning whenever he was at Idaho. I'm like, man, whoever picks Jason Eck up, I mean, they're going to hit the golden ticket there because, man, I don't know if you guys watched last year when Idaho went to Oregon, right? I mean, that literally went down to the fourth quarter. And I think they ended up beating Idaho like 24-17 or something like that. But I mean, I want to say it was tied or Idaho had a small lead on them from the majority of the game. They came out and, they smacked Oregon in the mouth. So Jason Eck, man, he could scheme up some good stuff. And I think if Michigan isn't ready, man, it's going to be closer than what people realize, in my opinion. And I hope I'm right on that. Because, like I said, I think Jason Eck's a great coach. I'm not a huge UNM fan when it comes to football, but I like Jason Eck, man. I really think he's a solid coach, and he's going to do some good stuff for that program.
Yeah, no, that's a game to look out for. Hey, it might be entertaining. All right, so of course, to our final game of week 1, the super heavyweight showdown, national champion Ohio State versus the Texas Longhorns. That team is the NIL team of the century. Texas just spends money like it's water. You have Arch Manning, of course, legacy with the Manning brothers and, his grandpa Archie Manning, all that good stuff. He's poised to be a star quarterback this year. Texas is retooling, giving Lambos and Escalades and Mercedes to all the players. So they have a bunch of stars. I don't know, Troy. This is going to be a good one. I mean, who can cover Jeremiah Smith? That's the key. This guy is arguably the best receiver in college football. I mean, maybe Ryan Williams, but you could even say Jeremiah Smith is better than him. I mean, the dude is dope. He can catch, he can run any route. He has great hands, speed, everything. So
Yeah,
it's going to be a tough game. I mean,
I
as a
agree, man.
Horns fan, for the sake of being a Horns fan, I'm going to say 31-28 Longhorns and a tough one.
Yeah,
But who knows? I mean, once Ohio State gets rolling, it's hard to stop that momentum. But I'm going to stick with my boys, hook them.
man.
And I got Texas winning by 3 points.
Hey, Steve Sarkisian, man. He love him or hate him, that dude's a coach.
Heck yeah.
So he knows how to win. Man, I'm gonna say 42-38 Ohio State.
Ooh, okay.
And you know me, I'm not an Ohio State fan either. So I'm not a Texas fan either. So I mean, some of these games are hard for me to pick, but I do see Ohio State maybe pulling that one out. But I can see it go either way, honestly. However, that is going to be, I mean, dude, and it's kicking off at what, 11?
Yes.
So I mean, man, that's going to be great. But
Bro, I'll tell you this. Being a Horns fan, I'm so confident if Texas loses that game, next time we have our podcast after that game, if Texas loses, I will wear the scarlet and silver. I don't know what I have, but I will wear some type of Ohio State represented gear or at least some type of Ohio State colors live on this podcast because I know the burnt orange isn't gonna let me down. What do we always say, Troy? Texas is back. This is their year. Natty, Heisman for Arch Manning, everything. We're bringing back the glory days like 2005 with Vince Young. It's going down, Troy.
Well, I hope as an LSU fan, I hope we can mimic that 2019-2020 year where
it won't happen.
Joe Burrow.
They're dead, Troy.
Lit up.
Put LSU in the grave. They are dead, Troy. We're burying them now. We do not care about LSU on this podcast. They are dead.
Man, we'll see. If LSU can squeeze a win out against Clemson, I think that's going to set them up the entire season. So, but I am looking forward to this college football season, man. I think it's going to be fun. But just to kind of give an overview, because like I said, we're going to talk about the big schools, but we're also going to talk about the smaller schools. And Chris, I don't know if you have a smaller school you're going to follow up with this week, but I think
Mount Union, baby.
So we're going to have a lot of, I don't know if you guys realize this, but we're going to have a lot of games throughout the week. So Thursday, that's kind of when it starts kicking off. I am going to follow up with Wyoming-Akron. I think that'll be a pretty good little matchup. That's going to be happening up there in Akron, Ohio. Also, I believe there was another one. I think Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech is playing, man, they're playing, Colorado. They're playing on Friday, I think. So,
prime time, huh?
Yeah. So that game should be good. Nebraska, they're playing Cincinnati on Friday. So we got a couple of good games happening throughout the week. But as far as Division II goes, New Mexico Highlands and Eastern New Mexico this Thursday. I believe that's going to be at Greyhound Stadium over there in Portales, New Mexico. I'm going to be following up with that one, man, just because New Mexico Highlands, I like their coaching staff. I think they're going to kind of turn that corner just because, man, they've been down for the last couple years. But also you have Coach Lee over there at Eastern New Mexico as well. He was there whenever they rebuilt Eastern New Mexico. They weren't a powerhouse, but they were consistently good. And, they made a couple of postseason appearances, like in some bowl games at the Division II level. And he left to take a high school job and then came back. So, he's building some good stuff over there at Eastern New Mexico. You could always count on them to be a pretty solid contender, pretty decent school. But like I said, man, I'm pulling for New Mexico Highlands on that one. Just because New Mexico Highlands hasn't had a lot of success, and I would like to kind of see that program take off a little bit. So I'm going to say 24-21 on that matchup there.
Troy, are you turning into the second biggest game of Week 1? Are you tuning in Ferris State versus Pittsburgh State on Thursday in Kansas?
Man, I will say this. I've been to Pitt State a couple times for work, and I got it, man. I got to go to the jungle, and I got to catch a ball game out there because that experience for Division II, I mean, it's legit, man. And plus, they have like one of the best division, like they have one of the best college logos. It's a gorilla. So I mean, yeah, it's legit. So that's going to be a good matchup because Pitt State, they're a powerhouse, and so is Ferris State. I will say this about Ferris State, man. Their offense is pretty fast paced. They're quick. I know, I can't remember. They went to the national. I think they won the national championship last year, but I know for sure the year before they did. So, man, it'll be a good matchup. So those teams are always going pretty far in the Division II playoffs. If not, they're in the national championship playing, for a title. So another game that I'm also going to pay attention to. One that's it's not close to here, but it's a school close to here, Northeastern State. So they, for the longest time, I think carried like the longest losing streak between them and Fort Lewis. And they finally I guess broke that last year. So, man, once again, I think they had a new coaching staff last year. They were in the MIAA, which is like the SEC of Division II. But I think they're playing like an independent schedule now, so that's helped them out a little bit. But they're going to kick their season off against Saginaw Valley State up in Michigan. So that'll be a good matchup for them. Hopefully they can pull out a win, man. I want to see that program grow. There is a branch of that university down the street from my house, so there's a lot of NSU alum walking around here. It's just one of those programs, man, that used to be good whenever they were NAIA. They just haven't been good since they transitioned to Division II. But I want to see them do good, and hopefully, like I said, there's a lot of good football. Make sure to just tune in, and who knows, you might be you might be in one of the cities that's next to one of these smaller venues that are going to be hosting one of these games this weekend. So check it out.
Yes. Watch, for our viewers, hey, watch a lot of football. Once we get better at this, we want to eventually open it up to where people could have some live chats and, send us some prompts or some cool stuff that you guys know about some of these smaller programs or predictions. So we're going to get there, and it's going to be exciting. But hey, it's Troy and Chris. Those guys, Not Your Average Sports Podcast. And until next time, we're signing off. Thank you.